detail, you watch it, but he talked about the border. He essentially talked about something I've talked about quite a bit, that we need to build a wall. And I told him this at the end in an interview. I said, you can use this. Feel free to pass it on to the president, because I've been saying for a year now, build a wall, better for us all. And he basically reiterated that in his speech, not my saying, but essentially that the wall was the best thing, not only for America, the United States of America, but for Mexico and for those people who are being falsely lured here by false promises, to be honest with you, from the progressive and the Democratic Party and the mainstream media. And they're being used, they're pawns, and he makes a very good case for that. That really, and I whole concept. The White House for the nation, for the president, for the world than he probably believed at any time in its history, certainly in his lifetime of experience. He also, by the way, was U.S. Army. They have a world ministry, part of a worldwide network. If you've never been there, I would strongly encourage you just check it out. It is an amazing area. It is located not too far from I-4 and 275. You can check that out. But she said she loved that church. She had been to a service there and hoping to join it, and she thought maybe I was a pastor or a minister. Actually, Hindi, but they were Christian, and they were talking about how Christian look at him as really the leader of Christians in a way, the safety of Christians around the world. I knew there were some aspects of that, but to hear it coming from these gentlemen's mouths, and actual speaker, a couple of questions, mission here was not only to thank the president, but to encourage Christian Indians, pastors, and I didn't realize how many there were. Apparently there are quite a few Indian American Christians here, and there was to convince them and all other Indians that are American citizens to support President Trump. That was the main mission they were here. So that was very interesting. So once again, a couple of ways to look at it. One, if you just want to see the event, you can go straight to John Martin Talks Facebook page. I didn't post much over the weekend because I was fishing, combined with this. I just didn't have the time, so I apologize. But check it out, John Martin Talks Facebook page. You can also see it on the Citizens for Trump, 3 separate words, Citizens for Trump. You can see my pre-event interview, the event, and my post-event interview there. So thank you to everybody that put that on, and thank you to the people behind Citizens for Trump for allowing me to be there as well. Okay, we're going to move on now. President Trump had a busy weekend. Man, it started off with him speaking, and we talked about this on Thursday's show extensively. If you haven't seen that, go directly to John Martin Talks, like it, share it with those. Look at our Thursday show, because we talked about President Trump in Europe, specifically at the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, and he did a great job. He's had of Mexico celebrates Tijuana rally. Local door reluctant U.S. to this big rally. He was going on him, so rally. Well, heads I hope prevailed, and maybe we'll actually get something done. But the president's people negotiated a deal, and it looks like the tariffs are not going to be necessary. Back to the article. The president, talking about the president of Mexico, president's comments came shortly after his foreign minister and chief negotiator, Marcelo Ebrard, told the rally the country had emerged from the high-stakes talks that avoided U.S. tariffs on Mexico exports with its dignity intact. Now, I'm not sure what that means. It sounds like it means that every side left there happy. Now, that is the art of the deal, because Donald Trump had told us in the book of The Art of the Deal that you've had a successful deal when everybody leaves there thinking they gave a little and got a little and basically were happy. So the president's people, led by the president, even though he wasn't here, make no mistake, his presence was, led to this deal. The rally in Tijuana, a short walk from the border, was originally scheduled as an act of solidarity in the face of President Donald Trump's threat to impose a tariff on Mexico exports. So they were planning on holding this rally there in order to show solidarity in case President Trump they couldn't negotiate a deal, and he did put forth the tariffs. If it did not stem the flow of Central American migrants crossing into territory towards the U.S., that was the threat, so to speak, of Donald Trump. But Donald Trump, as we know, he doesn't make threats. He makes promises, and he keeps them. So Trump's threat worked. These are my words. Promises made, promises kept. You don't have to make threats when you have promises made, promises kept, because people tend to start taking you at your word. When you drop the mother of all bomb like he did in Afghanistan, they take your word for it. But think about this, ladies and gentlemen. What if the establishment political swamp actually got right-headed and right-thinking and actually worked with our president? Could you imagine what he could accomplish if they actually worked with him? Now, I don't expect them to. In fact, this whole week while President Trump was over in Europe, you could hear the talking heads on both sides of the aisle. I'm not going to let the Republicans off scot-free on this by any stretch, because a lot of them, led by old turtlehead Mitch McConnell, were all opposed to the president. Oh, tariffs don't work. I got a big kick out of Democrats going, these are just a form of taxes, as if they ever were opposed to taxes. It's unbelievable. They're opposed to tax cuts, and now they're opposed to taxes. Imagine that, man. They're just opposed. They just Trump derangement syndrome. But imagine if the president actually had the support of the ruling class in this country, what could happen? But he's going to just have to beat them all. That's all there is to it. But back to the article. Billy Bob tells me back to the article. If you haven't met my psychic sidekick, this is Billy Bob Bass. He's got a Twitter handle. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. So check it out. Man, I am beginning to work up a little bit of a sweat here in my hidden bunker here in Hawthorne, Florida. But it's hot down here in Florida if you hadn't checked it out, man. We've been having some monsoon rains down here, and man, my fishing trip was a bumpy one, to say the least. I'll put a report out probably tomorrow. But after Mexican and U.S. officials reached an accord late Friday that calls on Mexico to crack down on migrants in exchange for Trump backing off his threat, like it was a threat, it was a promise, officials here converted the rally into a celebration They celebrate. Well, it sounds to me like the president's plans are working. President Trump's plans are working. And think about it. He hasn't even been able to enact any new laws, but he has put forth policies. He's put forth a few executive orders. The main thing that President Trump has done when it comes to immigration is about as radical as they could come. President Trump, now hang on, don't tune out before I get this through. President Trump is without a doubt the most radical president in my lifetime. Maybe the most radical president we've ever had. You know why I say that? Because he actually follows the rule of law. President Trump's radicalness when it comes to the border is simply enforcing existing laws. Imagine that if the rest of the politicians would actually be so radical as to enforce the U.S. Constitution. We might get even further. But Lopez Obrador, president of Mexico, said, "We take advantage of being here in Tijuana, Tepate, to say that the people of the United States once more that we do not harbor any intention nor ill will or will harbor any intention to harm them, and we are resolved to collaborate with them in all areas, especially on the concerns spurred by the growth of the migratory flow to their country." Migratory flow, like they're birds that go back and forth. They're illegal aliens. I wish to God we could just get to the point of just not being so politically correct and just call it what it is. It's not a knock on them in a sense. It doesn't make them necessarily bad people, but the reality is they're not a migratory flock of butterflies. They're illegal aliens. But I got another radical idea here for the President Obrador. Why don't you do what our president has done and get really radical and simply follow the law? Simply do the rule of law. Not only Mexican law, because actually Mexico has some of the toughest immigration laws in the world, but they don't enforce them because they've been letting them free flow and bum rush or bus rush or train rush our border. And how about not just Mexican law, but how about, guess what? International law, because Mexico is in violation of international law, and so is every single person seeking asylum from Central and South America. Anyone who comes through Mexico to seek asylum in the United States is in violation of international law, because international law, to put it simply, says that when you are fleeing a country seeking asylum, you must first apply for asylum in the first country you come to. And guess what? That would be Mexico. So I got a radical suggestion for the president of Mexico. Follow your own law. Follow the rule of law of your own nation. Follow the rule of law of the United Nations, international law, and we got no problem. And you'd probably be better off as well. Build a wall, better for us all. At the same time, Mr. Obrador said, at the same time, we ask for their understanding, talking about the United States of America, their understanding the migratory phenomenon, like it's still butterflies or something, doesn't come from nowhere. We know where it's coming from, and it comes from the material needs and the insecurity in the Central American countries. There's also people literally coming through Mexico, from Africa to the United States via Mexico. We're having that too. Region where they are human beings, nobody's denying that, need to set out on a pilgrimage to mitigate their hunger and their poverty or to save their lives. There's another possibility. They could. Perhaps they should just stay at home and fight for their freedom just like we did here in the United States of America. And guess what, citizens of Mexico? How did you get free? You didn't get free by some proclamation or by some, wishful thinking. You got free because you fought for your freedom. Your ancestors in Mexico fought for their freedom and won it. That's how Mexico got free. That's how basically every nation on earth that is free got free. They had to fight for it. That is a radical idea, but it's the only way to actually maintain freedom. Because if you get freedom for free, you won't keep it very long. Tijuana residents at the rally said they supported the terms of the agreement, but residents just a block away expressed concern. The deal could mean more asylum seekers having to wait in Tijuana. See, they're okay with it Mexicans are okay with it as long as they're just passing through, hey, like a parade. Hey, going to the USA, man. But now that Donald Trump is enforcing U.S. law and it's backing them up a little bit, the Mexican people are saying, maybe some of these, it's all about color, right? Racism. But maybe some of these brown folks don't need to be here from other brown folks, by the way. It's just crazy, how everything is about race until it's not, right? But they went on to say that border cities for the resolution of their cases, but the residents just a block away expressed concern the deal could mean more asylum seekers having to wait in Tijuana and other Mexican border cities for the resolution of their case in the U.S. That process are even years. Better for them to do it there than here. And if you want to talk about Mexico paying for the wall, let me tell you, President Trump's promise will definitely come true if these asylum seekers have to stay in Mexico, because Mexico will be paying for 2 walls if that happens. They'll be not only wanting one here in the United States, but they'll say, hey, we need one on our southern wall. So Mexico will be paying for 2 walls if they actually have to feel the burden of the problem that we're feeling. The deployment of 6,000, this is talking about Mexico's response now to the agreement that they reached with Trump in his absence. The deployment of 6,000 National Guard troops appears to be the key commitment in what was described as unprecedented steps by Mexico to ramp up enforcement, though Interior Secretary Olga Sanchez Cordero said that had already been planned and was not a result of the external pressure. So the fact that the federales are actually starting to enforce Mexico's immigration laws was pre-planned. Now, you believe that? If you believe that, sir, then I got another deal for you, and it involves a little structure called the Brooklyn Bridge in New York. It might be for sale. Donald could sell you that. Ocasio-Cortez probably could too, but she probably would. Another key element of the deal is that the United States will expand a program known as the Migrant Protection Protocol, or what Mexico calls the MPP. And this is since January. They've been doing it since January, but it's going to ramp up. There have been 10,393 returns by migrants to Mexico while their cases wind their way through U.S. So returning people back to Mexico for them to wait their asylum. And like I say, if that actually continues, expect for Mexico to be clamoring for a wall to be built. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen, and you snowflakes out there, and you Democrats who are criticizing the president all the time, enforcement actually works. Law enforcement actually works. They don't want you to know that because it blows away their particular plans if enforcement actually works. If enforcing existing laws actually work, we might not even need Congress for a few years, because who would argue on either side of the aisle, or citizens, that we don't have enough laws already? Observers said a concern is that if the MPP rolls out on a massive scale along the United States entire southern border, it could overwhelm Mexican border cities. Well, I got a suggestion for you. Build a wall on both ends of your country. Better for all. Anyway, it's just crazy. So while the president has been leading from the front, not from behind, in Europe, and leading at the United States at the same time, what's been happening on the home front with the Democrats? Well, you probably didn't, hard to guess, Pelosi and her crazy bunch. This is coming from Fox News. Pelosi hits Trump deal, talking about the deal we just spoke about, with Mexico, accuses him of threats and temper tantrums. So it worked, but it's threats and temper tantrums. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, on Saturday hit parts of President Trump's deal with Mexico on stopping migrant flows, not illegal aliens, but butterflies, I suppose, or what she would call provisional ballots, flows after he threatened to slap tariffs on the country, saying that Trump was engaged in threats and temper tantrums. Stopping migrant flows. So let me just say, I saw this, and I can't remember the gentleman's name where I'd give him credit, but I saw this on Facebook yesterday where this gentleman who was a Trump supporter and happened to be an African-American black man Trump supporter, imagine that, there are quite a few out there, much to the chagrin of the Democratic Party, but he said, why don't you just basically, talking about their leaders really, but you could ask any of them that still support the Democratic Party, why do you care more, talking about their leaders, for American citizens? Why? Really, truly, if you're a minority population in this country, you ought to be asking that Hispanics, African Americans, Black Americans, however you want to label them, I mean Americans in general should be asked, especially people if they're poor, should be saying poor people across the board, black, white, whatever color of the rainbow you may be, should be asking how does it help our country? I mean, all you got to do is look at our cities, man. Any Democratic city, right, major city, even my little city outside of here called Gainesville, Florida, is being led by progressive Democrats, being overwhelmed with just people living on the streets. It's unbelievable. But ask any Democratic leader, ask Nancy Pelosi, why do you care more about illegal immigrants than you do the safety, health, and welfare of your own citizens? That's an excellent question. Should be asked of them relentlessly. But Pelosi went on to say, President Trump undermined America's preeminent leadership role in the country by recklessly threatening to impose tariffs on our close friend and neighbor to the south. Recklessly. That's her term. President Trump is literally leading the world now. He has become not only the commander-in-chief, but he has assumed the mantle of leader of the free world. He literally has, and she calls it reckless. It's unbelievable. So the fact that it worked, his tactics with Mexico appear to be working, that's reckless because it's going to impair their ability to get these provisional ballots to jump across the border. She went on to say, threats and temper tantrums are no way to negotiate foreign policy. So I guess the best way to help our foreign policy when it comes to our southern neighbors is to have just an open border and an endless welfare state. That's what we need. And make no mistake about it, and I got a story coming up here in just a minute, that is exactly what the Democrats are implementing anywhere they have the power to do so. And I have a story coming out of California that will prove that without a shadow of a doubt. According to a joint declaration issued by the State Department in Mexico late Friday, Mexico will take unprecedented steps to increase enforcement to curb irregular migration, illegal migration, to include irregular migration, to include the deployment of its National Guard throughout Mexico, talking about the Mexican National Guard, giving priority to its southern border to actually stop people from coming into Mexico in the first place. That sounds really reckless to me. It does. I understand why you call it reckless, Ms. Pelosi, especially if your party depends on future illegals voting. Yeah, and they're giving them the right to vote in non-federal elections all over the country now where the Democrats have the power to do it. Because no wonder Nancy's calling it reckless, because it's going up against their plans. Have you noticed that average Americans, everyday working class Americans, are not supporting the Democratic Party? And so that's what terrifies them, because they know that a country that elected Donald Trump and is on the verge of re-electing him again will not support this nonsense. She goes on to say the U.S. will also expand its Remain Mexico policy or this is what the article is saying, policy returning asylum applicants to Mexico while their claims are being processed. Mexico said it will offer jobs, health care, and education according to its principles. Well, let me just tell you, U.S. citizens and citizens of Mexico, you building the wall, let me tell you, if they decide they're going to let people continue to flow into Mexico and stay there and offer them jobs, health care, and education, then you can bet the Mexican people will be going, build the wall, build the wall. I mean, they will be going wild about it. Pelosi said Democrats are deeply disappointed by the expansion of the Remain in Mexico. So she wants them to just come here. There's one thing I'll tell you about these progressives. You don't have to guess where they stand. If you will just listen to them and take them at their word, this Trump derangement syndrome, Trump's presidency has emboldened them to tell you exactly. Right here, Pelosi is opposed to people staying in Mexico. She wants them right here. She said it violates the rights of asylum seekers. No, it doesn't. Asylum seekers, I said earlier, are violating international law if they cross through Mexico to seek asylum in the United States without seeking it first in Mexico. That is a violation of international law, Miss Pelosi. But, you know, the rule of law is probably not one of your strong points. She also promised that Congress would continue to put pressure on the administration on migration. So I'll say again, I'll repeat my question. Ask Nancy Pelosi or any Democratic leaders or anybody supporting the Democratic Party, why do you care more for illegals than American citizens? And she goes on to say, Congress will continue to hold the Trump administration accountable for its failures to address the humanitarian situation at our border. They just can't call it a crisis. The New York Times has called it a crisis. The New York Times has called it an emergency. Many publications have called it an emergency now. But Democrats, it's just a little, we just got a little situation down there. I mean, it's crazy. How can these people stay in power, man? Because you either don't know the truth, can't handle the truth, or know the truth and don't want to handle it or whatever. But anyway, back to the article. She said President Trump, this is Nancy Pelosi, must stop sabotaging good faith, constructive, and bipartisan efforts. Now, you know what I tell you, the definition of bipartisanship in this current makeup of Congress, and has been for a couple of decades now, actually. Bipartisanship means Republicans cave. When you hear the word bipartisanship, it means Republicans cave. Show me where it doesn't. Efforts, she said, President Trump must stop sabotaging good faith, constructive, and bipartisan efforts in Congress to address this complex problem in a humane manner that honors and respects our most cherished national values. Our most, like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How about that cherished value? Let me give you a translation of what. Plain and simple. She's saying, stop! Stop before it's too late and the swamp is gone. She's speaking for the swamp rat. She's Queen Swamp Rat. She might as well just get married to Mitt Romney because he's King Swamp Rat. And together, between Romney and Pelosi, this is to our border laws. What we really, there's some tweaks that need to happen, but what we really need to do is enforce the existing law and build a wall better for us all. But that's a whole nother story right now. I call it an unholy alliance. It and preachers to keep a county dry because the preachers didn't Koch brothers that want cheap labor, and you got people saying they're getting nothing done. They haven't for a long time. He said in a tweet, nervous Nancy Pelosi Let me just tell you flat out, there is no cure for Trump derangement syndrome. They are hopeless, man. So the only cure, if there is one, is to channel your innermost Davis, the former owner. See, John Martin, but if I say it, it bears repeating, and this certainly does. When it comes to progressive, yeah, so just win, baby. Keep winning, winning, winning while they're whining, whining, whining. Make them whine. All right, so you're in the weekend, I should coming out of Iowa. And I like it. In Iowa, AP. Congratulations, I said that correctly, right? Cedar Rapids. Buster Fraser, 9. At the California Democratic State Convention, not this week. Campaign. We'll see how that works for you. In 5-minute chunks of speaking time, I love it when they give these politicians 5 minutes. The their cases before 1,400 the most. Don't you say what of us up here you think sucks less and go with that, because that's really what it's all about. There's no one with the sickle. I don't know how do you jab somebody with a sickle? I don't know. Maybe I don't understand it. But Sanders, who trails only Biden in the polls, described a candidate, talking about Biden, pursuing a middle ground strategy that antagonizes no one, that stands up to nobody, and that you described. Didn't she beat you last time, Bernie? Because it sounds to me like describing the wildebeest right there. But Biden's kind of running a campaign similar to Hillary, and it was enough to beat you. About forth. But Sanders goes on to say, in my view, that approach, talking about the Hillary campaign, I guess, even though it's Biden, view that approach I feel could end up with the re-election of Donald Trump. And I can't, I apologize for these names. This old salty dog has trouble with them. Who remember saying he's a better Christian than Mike Pence? I mean, he's turn us. To an age, all right, Stone Age. Biden skipped of those attending this Cedar Rapids, Iowa event. You is now less than 8 months away. So how's that working for them, man? There was so many stories coming out of there. Beto O'Rourke at 2%. He said he's not worried about it, and he ain't much worried. Campaign in western Iowa. So the and the at the same time, setting up a direct comparison between the two that Biden has sought to emphasize. Well, let me tell you, old creepy, your face. that that few, if any, of his opponents took exception to his change on abortion. You know why? You know why that is? Because think about it. They really want to have a debate over making the baby come. That's where making the baby come after it's born. Have the Hyde Amendment. I'm glad this, because the concept of the Hyde Amendment isn't good, that federal funds should not be spent on abortion. I'm talking about what's actually been happening since the Hyde, because is not being spent on abortion. Planned Parenthood. And those funding like, and I said this last week, but if I say it, of course it bears repeating, it would be like a husband and wife having two incomes and saying, okay, we're not going to spend any of the wife's income on automobile expense. We're not going to spend any of it. We're only going to spend the husband's income on automobile expense. And they blend their money together. Come on. Once the money comes in, it doesn't matter where it's being spent. The Planned Parenthood got like $500 from the U.S. government. Of course, they may not take that check and write it directly out of that account, but they move money around all the time. Anyone who doesn't believe that the U.S. is funding abortion with federal taxpayer dollars is either naive, doesn't want to see it, or has their head in the sand, period. So the Hyde Amendment, in the practical sense, is not worth the paper it's written on. A Des Moines, Iowa registered CNN Minicom poll published Saturday showed Biden favored in Iowa, followed by Sanders, Warren, and Buttigieg. Can any of them beat Trump? Maybe Biden. Maybe Biden could. I don't know if he can get out of the Democratic primary. I suspect that when the chickens come home to roost, he might be in trouble. California Senator Kamala Harris, who trails in fifth. Remember when she was like the heir apparent, when she did her first rally, and MSNBC basically bestowed the presidency upon her on Morning Joe and the rest of them. They did like a week of Kamala Harris. I don't think they even mentioned her name anymore. But California Senator Kamala Harris, who trails in fifth last week, called herself absolutely opposed to maintaining the Hyde Amendment, but she avoided criticizing Biden on abortion in her Sunday speech. Well, I just told you. First, the Hyde Amendment is meaningless in reality. And secondly, they don't want to have a debate about keeping the baby comfortable before they whack his head off. They can't win that debate, and they know it, so they don't want that. But here's the thing about, I kind of feel sorry for Kamala Harris a little bit, because her whole campaign, well, how she got all the way to the U.S. Senate, that strategy is just not going to work in 2020. You know what I say? Why? Well, it's not because she's the ganja queen, smoking pot so much her dad's ashamed of her. That's not it. It's because of the, like the Willie Horton, the Willie Brown deal, where she worked on Willie's couch. Let's just put it that way, and got noticed and got to where she is. How's that going to work in the presidential field to winning them out? She can't even get to be vice president, I don't think. Let's think about it. So how's she going to beat Bernie Sanders? I mean, I don't know, without some medication he'd be that interested. Elizabeth Warren, I never seen her being indicated in that, and we already know about Mayor Pete, so I just don't see how she's going to negotiate this field at all. She's going to have to change her time-honored strategy, let's put it that way. But Elizabeth Warren also stayed away from the abortion funding debate and instead framed her veiled criticism. What they veiled? Are they really wearing a veil? I don't know. Veiled criticism of Biden through her focus on rooting moneyed interests out of politics. She says, I'm not spending my time with high-dollar donors and with corporate lobbyists. She said, that's how we build grassroots movement in America. Now, think about this. None of them are mentioning Hunter Biden and the Chinese billions. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we've covered it before, but wake up. You talk about somebody who is on the take, man. It is Joe Biden and his family. They make, if you think that the Trumps are on the take, and I don't think they are, but if you think they are, man, they are nothing compared to the one Biden child who's already raking in billions from Chinese and the Ukraine and the Russians and everywhere else. June, this month of June is a very important month here. It's hot in Florida and about to get, I mean, I pity us in South Florida because the Democrats are coming. They're going to be camped out for a whole weekend there. June is an important month for the candidates with the important second quarter fundraising deadline approaching. We talked about how they got to have a certain amount of individual donors to make the debate stage, as well as the first nationally televised Democratic debate. Participation in the debate depends on the candidate's strength in the polls and campaign contributions. Not to mention what I call the jackass challenge, because let me tell you, you want to know a place that it's hard to ride a jackass through? That is the state of Florida. It's hot, mosquitoes, and it's wet. You got all them rivers to ford. Gators love jackasses, that kind of thing. They're coming for you. And the reason I said, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to tune in to John Martin Talks more often. But any of them that signed on to the Green New Deal, the first question in Miami should be, how many of you by show of hands are for the Green New Deal? And they'll raise their hand. And the next question should be, well, how'd you get here? And if it wasn't on the back of a jackass, if it was by a plane, a boat, or a train, or a car, then you are disingenuous at best, because if you sign on the Green New Deal, you are officially the jackasses on Jackass Party. Excuse me. California to become the first state, this is a new article, we're moving on. Got to keep up, don't we, Billy Bob? This is from USA Today. California to become the first state to extend health care benefits to some who live in U.S. illegally. Like I told you, that they're putting this into practice. If you don't think that they want health care for all, they don't want to encourage more illegals to come, then you hadn't been paying attention, because in California, anywhere that the Democrats are ruling, they are giving away the candy store, man. California was poised Monday to become the first state to provide health care coverage to young, low-income adults living in the country illegally, after legislative leaders provide a thumbs up to Gavin Newsom's $98 million plan targeting of almost 100,000 low-income adults, 100,000 illegal immigrants. They're giving them free stuff, man, trying to make them true Democrats. Let me just say, man, I know there's a lot of good people out in California. You guys chime in all the time, and I feel for you out there. I know you're up against it. I kind of know how it is because of where I live here in Florida. I live in the blue part of Florida, man, a blue lake, the most liberal part of the country, Alachua County, Florida, where the University of Florida and City of Gainesville is. But let me just tell you, hang in there out there. Maybe help is on the way, but if you decide to leave, two things I ask. Will the last taxpayer in California bring the two flags, because not only the U.S. flag, but I like your Don't Tread on Me California flag. Bring the flag with you. And the other thing I ask is, if you come to Texas, Florida, anywhere else, leave your politics in California unless you're conservative. Bring that on here, because we don't want you to come here. We don't mind you coming here, but don't come here and vote for the same things that want you to leave California. Please, I'm asking you. Don't ask for much, but I'm asking for that. The full legislature is still talking about California and giving away free medical care, free taxpayer medical care to people there illegally. The full legislature must sign off on the plan that would make such immigrants between the ages of 19 and 25 eligible for Medi-Cal, the state's Medicaid program. The deal was a win for Gavin Newsom, who rejected as too expensive a state Senate plan to include adults 65 or older. So the state legislature wanted to make it even bigger. They wanted to include old illegal immigrants. But Gavin Newsom is just about the young ones, because they're going to be able to vote longer, and he's afraid that the older crowd may be too set in their ways to actually change their plans. So, but let me tell you, man, is there any doubt this thing's going to pass? Of course it'll pass. And if you're old, well, I guess too bad. So the Democratic Party, what kind of message are they sending? If you're old, you're in the way. Anthony Wright, executive director of the advocacy group Health Access, said further expansion of the program could come in the future. Could come. Oh, it will come. Trust me, it will come. And if they have their say, if the Democrats ever get real power in D.C., they're going to bring it nationwide. Make no mistake. But Wright posted on Twitter, I love this part here. He says, we will continue to pursue steps towards the governor and legislature's shared goal of getting to universal coverage in the next few years. So they're talking about universal coverage for illegal immigrants, not just American citizens. Make sure you understand this. For everyone who happens to be on this side of the border. And so I just asked Mr. Wright, man, why stop there? Why stop there, sir? Why not the world? Why not the entire world? And while you're at it furnishing coverage for illegal aliens, why not the ancient aliens? Why not universal? Why not put it out to everybody? Why doesn't California and the Democratic Party going to make the whole United States of America pay for universal coverage? I mean, that is really universal. Don't stop at illegal aliens. Get the ancient aliens as well. Lawmakers have, now this right here, this next little line will guarantee you that it's going to pass. Lawmakers have until this Saturday to approve the budget or face what? Losing their pay. I'm going to make a prediction. Nah, I'm not even going to make a prediction on that. I don't want to look foolish. Because what would your prediction be? That if they got till Saturday to pass it, they're going to lose their pay? What would your prediction be? This is Senator Holly Mitchell of Los Angeles, a Democrat who led the budget negotiations. I mean, these people will tell you what's on their mind if you listen to them. She said, California believes that health is a fundamental right. Health. Now what? She didn't say health care. She said health. California believes that health is a fundamental right. Not just health care, but health. Think about that. You have a right to health? How the heck are we supposed, I mean, the only way you could possibly have a guaranteed right to health is if we go to the Matrix model where we become batteries for the robots and we live in a fantasy world. Maybe that's what they want because the progressives live in a fantasy world. They want you to believe, for instance, you can have an open border policy and free stuff, a total open-ended welfare state like California and survive. It's not possible. Why is it that Democrats always want to talk about, you don't believe in science? And they say they believe in every science except when life conceived, and the other one, the science of economics. They don't believe in that at all. But let's see here. Trying to expand there. It's a little technical difficulty. Sorry about that. But to pay for part of it, the state, talking about California, and you got to love, this is progressive logic, man. You got to, progressive logic 101 right here. But to pay for it, this free health care for illegals, the state will begin taxing people who don't have health insurance. So in order to pay for people that are here illegally so that they can have health insurance, they're going to tax their own citizens that don't have health insurance, most likely because they can't afford it. I mean, give me a break, man. Republicans on the legislative committee, I got to applaud them. They're standing up. Republicans on the legislative committee negotiating the budget voted against the proposal, arguing it was not fair to give health benefits to people who are in the country illegally while taxing people who are here legally for not purchasing health insurance. Let me just tell you. I hate to tell you, Republican. First, let me give you credit. Standing up. One thing about, and I'm not trying to label all these Republicans, I don't know them, but Republicans always stand when they can't make a difference. You ever notice that? In Washington, they stood up for, we're going to pass it, we're against Obamacare, until they actually had a chance to vote against it. Then they didn't, and John McCain, we can thank him for that. But you Republicans out there, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and give you the benefit of the doubt and say thank you for standing up. But I hate to tell you, it is a waste of time. And I know you know this already. There's no way you're going to change what's happening in California until people get truly woke, and it seems like a long way out. But I'll tell you this out there around the country. If you want to stop this ludicrous, this crazy progressive wave that has taken over the Democratic Party and taken over California and is attempting to take over the entire United States of America, if you want to stop it, there is only one way to do it. You can't deal with these progressives. You can't negotiate with these progressives. You can't reason with these progressives. And you absolutely cannot compromise with these progressives. The only way to stop them is, repeat after me, defeat them at the ballot box. That's the only way. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Go directly to my Facebook page, John Martin Talks. Like it and share it with others. Thanks for tuning in on places like Deplorable Resistance, Citizens for Trump, Media Measures, a host of sites that are hosting me now, host of hosts. If you would like to host our show, just send me a message. You can do it through Facebook. John Martin Talks is the best way to do it. And we'll talk about how we can get my show over your ears. Thank you again. But like I say always, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.